When I was 13, it was my grade 8 year, my mom took me to this great big, fabulous old music hall in Toronto called Massey Hall. And we sat there and we listened to a man named Gordon Lightfoot, and I knew that name, but I couldn't believe it. It was about 5 songs in, and I said to my Mom, why do I know all the words to every song he's singing? And she kind of chuckled and said, well, you grew up listening to him. My mom was a big Gordon Lightfoot fan. Now, Gordon Lightfoot is probably older than your grandparents. He was born in 1938, but if you mention the name Gordon Lightfoot to your grandparents, I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. You see, when Gordon Lightfoot got started in the 1960s, there was no Canadian music scene at all. Really, not at all. I mean, if you were one of the top Canadian musicians at the time, you were still probably relatively unknown outside of, whatever city that you lived in. Nowadays, we're really used to seeing Canadian names all over the charts. I mean, if you look at within an hour drive of here, 4 of the most successful artists in the English-speaking world, they just live here. Like if we go with Shawn Mendes, who's probably the least successful of the 4 I'm going to talk about, we've got The Weeknd, okay, boy of Ethiopian first generation immigrant parents, but he's just like everything he touches is going skyrocketing high. We've got Justin Bieber, who since childhood has been smashing records. But now we've got Drake. I mean, Drake just set the world record for the most #1 hits of anyone ever. He just beat Madonna. He just beat Madonna's record. He beat the Beatles' record a couple years ago. Now, I'm not asking you to like any of their music, of any of those guys, but you cannot deny what kind of gravity this has, and especially putting, Toronto just on the map of places where hits can be made and can happen. Well, it didn't used to be like that. We're going to take a look at Gordon Lightfoot. And Gordon Lightfoot, he was credited not just with creating a music scene in Canada, but with helping define the folk music sound, the folk rock sound, and country sounds coming up through the 1960s and 1970s. Now, I can't play you any of his music directly on this video, or YouTube will take it down. I don't have copyrights for it, but I can certainly put up links to things that I would like you to listen to, and even some lyrics that I'd like you to take a look at. So, what does Gordon Lightfoot look like? Well, this is what he used to look like. And if you take a look here, you can maybe still see that young man in that picture, but look at the guitar here. So 12 strings, you can tell by all of those tuners, 6 on each side. And take a look at the shape of this pick guard. So that kind of gives his guitar away. But do you see that young man still in this picture? Maybe a little bit, but look, there's that 12 string. Ooh, and if you look here, you might be able to see there's the shape of that pickguard. So we are looking at, he has had this guitar through the years, but people fell in love with the sound of Gord's voice. And it's not just his voice, though, that got people, but he did what no singer should do, and he picked up smoking. He also picked up heavy drinking. He had a really hard time with alcohol for a long time. But people didn't just fall in love with the sounds that he made. They also fell in love with his songs. This is a list of people who have covered Gordon Lightfoot's songs. Remember, a cover version is, they recorded it for themselves. Ooh, look, Harry Belafonte. He's the guy who sang, like, Day-ho, day-ho, daylight come and me won't go home. And I don't expect that you'd know most of these names. Ian Campbell, Glenn Campbell, massive country music star. As we cruise through, look, Johnny Cash. Okay. Oh gosh, we're still in the letter C's here. But maybe you know the name Eric Clapton, right? These are some of these people are some of the biggest names ever in music. Bob Dylan just went by. And look, the Grateful Dead, one of the most successful touring bands that has ever been on planet Earth. Look at this list, though. It just goes on and on and on. That was Jerry Lee Lewis who went by. There was Joni Mitchell up there. And maybe, I don't know, would you know the name Elvis Presley? I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than this. The list just goes on and on and on. People love Gordon Lightfoot's music. So let's get you to a point where you can get a listen. What does he sound like? Just before we get to listening to the music, let's get a little bit of history behind it. We're going to take on one of his greats here, the Canadian Railroad Trilogy, and it's often called the Great Canadian Railroad Trilogy. So why and when did he write this? Well, this song was commissioned, which means he was paid money up front to write a song for the CBC for something in 1967. Now, if you remember when Canada first became a country, right? That was 1867. So this was Canada's 100th anniversary, which blows my mind. That was only 7 years before I was born. Yeah, here it is. So, okay, CBC commissions him to write it. It becomes a national treasure, including when he met Queen Elizabeth II. She told him how much she enjoyed the song. And so what are the lyrics of this song? There was a time in this fair land. Don't worry, I'll give you a link to a YouTube where the lyrics scroll by as you're going. But if we just read these opening couple of phrases, there was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild majestic mountains stood alone against the sun, long before the white man and long before the wheel, when the green dark forest was too silent to be real. So it does hint at a little bit of the indigenous perspective, long before the white man, but I got a feeling it doesn't entirely address the indigenous perspective because they didn't feel like the green dark forest was too silent to be real. I mean, that was just normal. Let's go on a little bit further. Okay, when it says, bring in the workers and bring up the rails. Of course, the rails are the big rail ties that the trains drive along. Here's another one. We are the navvies who work upon the railway. Well, what's a navvy? A navvy, so according to the Atlas of Alberta Railways, railway labourers or navvies, the term used in England that first described the canal builders, that is navigators, and was transferred to those same men and others who built the rights of way of the railway. So we're talking, these are the men primarily who lived in these camp towns that would travel along the railway, like every couple of weeks or every couple of months. They'd pack up and move the camp further down the railway for these guys to be able to get to work easily. And most of them were immigrants of various nationalities and ethnicities. That's a nice way of saying that they were poorly paid, barely above slaves, really. So now I'll check out the link to this YouTube right here. Now, as you go to watch this YouTube video that will have the lyrics and has a performance of Gordon Lightfoot playing this song, remember that this is purely about getting some exposure to history. In the same capacity that when you are older and you're talking to children, you may end up talking about this time of global lockdown, and they won't understand it. And but it's important for them to at least be able to appreciate that you know the difference. You are some of the people who understand what it was like before the global pandemic. And even people born right now, they will never understand that. That time it's over. Just like any time. It came and went. But you will have the ability to share with them what it was like. And anyway, so this, looking back into Canadian music history, there was a time when Canadian music was undefined. Nobody knew what Canadian music was. But this man, Gordon Lightfoot, he helped to put us on the map. There were many others, but he was a big influencer. Okay, enjoy just listening to it. You don't have to like it, but just listen to it and read along. Take care.